proceed slowly with the introduction so that enough people, the majority of the people who signed up to attend are in attendance, in fact. But let me, right off the bat, introduce myself. I'm Bob Cargill, president of AMA Boston, and we are very, very excited to be partnering with WSI to co-present today's webinar. So today's webinar is called it's WSI, your trusted partner for digital marketing. They are presenting it along with us, AMA Boston. And the title of the webinar is Combat COVID-19, Adapt Your Marketing Approach to Maximize Lead Generation and Revenue. So welcome everybody. And let me tell you a little bit about WSI. WSI is a global digital business. They've been around for 25 years. They're a Google Premier digital marketing agency, and they help businesses and brands grow through creative and digital marketing strategies. And Peter Berson is on the board alongside Megan McGrath, who you're going to hear from in just a minute, and myself and a bunch of others. Peter is the VP of Technology on the AMA Boston Board of Directors, and that's how this thing came about. So Peter and Vineesh, who you're going to meet in just a minute, are going to be co-presenting the webinar, and at a much higher level, as I said, WSI and AMA Boston are your hosts. So again, I'm Bob Cargill. I am president of AMA Boston. This is my second year as president, winding things down and about to turn things over to Megan McGrath, who is AMA Boston's president-elect. So I've introduced you to Peter and also Vineesh Sandhir. So it's Peter Berson and Vineesh Sandhir from WSI. They'll be presenting this webinar, but let me introduce you now to my president-elect, our president-elect on the AMA Boston Board of Directors, Meg McGrath, and she'll tell you a little bit about AMA Boston. Meg?
Great. Hi, everyone. Megan McGrath here. This is our website. If you haven't visited it, or if this is your first time joining an AMA Boston event, welcome. You can check us out at amaboston.org. We have a lot of virtual events coming up. Given the global pandemic that's going on, you're probably not strangers to that new format. We'll be doing more webinars like this with WSI and other trusted AMA Boston marketing partners who are going to bring you great thought leadership. We also have monthly networking events, one coming up next Thursday in the evening. I believe it starts at 7, so you can register for that as well. That's a free facilitated discussion style networking event, and this month we're going to be focusing on branding and how to pivot your brand, how to be talking about your brand, what to be putting out there digitally in terms of, shifting towards the new environment and being sensitive to the things that are going on with your customers today. So with that, I want to encourage you to reach out to us and at any time if you want to become a volunteer or participate in an event or even just get some marketing resources. We're happy to help, and I'll hand it over to Vineesh and Peter.
Peter, I think you're on mute.
Apologize. Thank you, Megan and Bob. I just wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping items. The mics and video for our attendees is off throughout the event. Please use the question and answer part to ask any questions to Vineesh or myself or Megan Bob. And if you have any technical difficulties, you can use the chat function to chat with the support. And again, please use the hashtag AMA Boston to tweet if you're sending out any messages or on Instagram, or again, at AMA Boston is our account. At this time, I just wanted to introduce Vineesh, who's a marketing research analyst that I've worked very closely with in my time with my agency, Aveli By WSI. He brings a wealth of experience in our global expertise, and I bring the local knowledge from being a native Bostonian, from understanding the Boston slang to my clients. Vineesh, why don't you take it from here? Talk about our agenda today.
Terrific, terrific. Thanks a lot, Peter. Thanks, Meg. Thanks, Bob, for having us. This is a great opportunity to provide some top-level education to the MA database. So pretty excited about it. So it's a pretty exciting agenda that we have lined up. We're going to start with looking at the impact of businesses that COVID's really having around the US and globally. So we're going to look at that in the first few segments. And then we're going to look at some interesting industries, some insights around industries that are trending up. As we all know, whenever a calamity like this really takes place, it's also a sense of an opportunity for some organizations and some industries. So we're going to be looking at what's trending. And that's really for us to get a sense of what are the different things that we could potentially be getting involved with from an opportunity standpoint. So having said that, the next segment is really going to be focusing around opportunities. There's a ton of opportunities right now that both small and large organizations are leveraging. So we want to be looking at some of these opportunities and educating you on some of these opportunities that are existing today. We'll go into some recipes for success. So there's some critical areas that we want to cover. And this is a really important section that everybody should be paying a little bit of attention to, because one of the slides actually focuses around your revenue centers. So we're going to be talking about 5 core revenue centers that each organization should be really looking at and focusing on, because in this day and age today, with this unprecedented crisis where essentially, I mean, it's not an economic crisis in the truest definition. It's a pretty unique crisis that we have. It's almost like man-made, because we forced the lockdown and the provisional measures on ourselves, as opposed to the economy forcing it on us, unlike what happened in 08 and 09, which was really driven by economic factors. So that's a really interesting piece, because everybody's looking at ways to maximize their revenue opportunities at this stage. So we're going to be looking at these recipes of success. And then we're also going to be looking at some tools and tactics as provided to you at the onset. The tools and tactics that we're going to be talking about are quite interesting, because a lot of the tools, or the organizations supporting the tools, have really stepped up to the plate, where they're offering a lot of stuff that's complementary. They're offering a huge number of amazing deals. So we have some resources lined up for you that you can take advantage of for either yourselves, your small businesses, or if you're working for an organization. These are things that you can potentially table as part of your marketing organization. Now, our aim is to try and finish off the webinar, say around 10 to 1, so that we have about a good 10 minutes for a Q&A segment towards the end. I'm pretty sure that there would be some questions that are queued up. So we'll definitely be addressing that as well. And Peter's got a couple of interesting polls lined up. So stay tuned for these polls. Peter, do you actually want to start with the first poll right now and get some engagement happening there? All right, so Peter's going to queue up the first poll now, which is a pretty interesting poll. There you go. The question really revolves around what your digital marketing strategy is going forward. And you essentially have 4 options. Are you looking at restarting your marketing plan? Are you going to be adjusting your existing marketing plan? Are you going to be looking at watching what the marketers in your industry are doing and adapting? Or are you going to be devising a marketing plan with an external consultant? So we'd love your feedback. We'd love your opinion on this. And Peter's going to be sharing the results towards the end of this session. All right, so let's dive right in here. In terms of impact for businesses around the globe, this is a survey that was done by PricewaterhouseCoopers. And if you're looking at some numbers, I mean, it shouldn't really come as a surprise. Over half the organizations that were essentially surveyed have stated the fact that COVID's going to have a significant impact to their business operations. It's a big cause of concern. It's a huge cause of concern for over half the organizations. 34% of the respondents were essentially commenting on the fact that it's limited to specific regions or certain services that the businesses are serving, but they're monitoring the situation very closely, which is heartening in itself. 34% is a decent number. And then you have 12% that essentially are talking about the fact that it is an isolated challenge. It's not greatly impacting the overall business situation, once again, they're monitoring it closely. But as we can see from this poll, it's quite evident and obvious that over half the organizations are really facing a significant impact with this unprecedented situation that we're facing today.
So Vineesh, I'm going to end the poll now, so we'll see the
For
results.
sure. Great.
Nope. There we go.
Oh, perfect. All right. So that's amazing. Okay. So 71% essentially are saying that you're going to be adjusting your existing marketing plan. 16% are restarting the marketing plan. 10% are looking at what the marketers are doing in their industry and adapting. And then 4% are going to be devising our marketing plan with an external consultant. Interesting feedback. No surprise. I mean, most of you are really adjusting your marketing strategy, forced to do that. But that's really good feedback. Thanks for participating. Okay, so the next thing we want to look at is a very interesting slide, because we can see that the COVID situation's impacting a variety of businesses in very different ways. So in this slide deck, which is provided by Moody's, what we've done is that we've classified the industries that are impacted as low, mid, and high. Now, bear in mind that the impact is either positive or negative for these industries. So for example, when we're looking at low impact industries, you're looking at areas like construction, low impact, impacted to an extent because there's been some emergency measures that have been taken out by certain counties or local provincial governments where they've restricted construction activity to an extent. But for the most part, as long as you're taking precautions, construction's been allowed to take place. Defense, equipment, transportation, there were special rules that were put out that facilitated the flow of goods and services, especially in the equipment and transportation industry. So that's on the low impact side. Rental, pharma is definitely a low impact. People need medication, it's continuing. But on the same side, pharma is also a high impact because everybody's now chasing the vaccine. And there's a crazy amount of investment that's happening, not just with the US and North American countries, but literally all across the globe in terms of really finding the vaccine. So pharma is definitely quite active at this stage. Real estate, a very interesting vertical, because we know in 08, 09, real estate was massively impacted, essentially facilitating, I guess, the real crash that took place. In this instance, what we're observing is that real estate is relatively unimpacted, because what's happening is that people are just playing a sort of a wait and see approach. Properties are not getting listed, they're just holding back. So real estate for the most part has been impacted to an extent, but not to the extent that it took place in 08 or 09. People are just waiting and watching, and when the economy resumes, the hope is that the transaction volume is just going to pick up and take over. And then on the other side, you're looking at telecom and waste management, relatively unimpacted. Some of the mid-impact industries that we're looking at are beverages, chemicals, manufacturing. Media is another interesting one, because your typical traditional media, Disney, I was just reading an article the other day, massive hit with the late release of their movies. They had some big ones coming out, like the Avengers series and the Black Widow and everything, that were all postponed, which were big hits for their empire, so to speak. Disneyland's closed, so Disney's really hurting across the board. But on the other side, what's interesting is the online impact of media. It's been absolutely insane. It's been crazy to the point where governments officially had to tell organizations like Netflix to lower their streaming quality just because they didn't want to get the internet impacted. And the last thing that I think we all want right now is the internet stopping for us, right? That's just the end of the world. Like, that's a true doomsday scenario, I guess, for all of us, especially in the digital space. So media is definitely impacted positively, to the sense where there's a ton of streaming that's happening, which provides access to a huge amount of inventory which wasn't available earlier. So there's definitely inventory that's opened up, which is also driving prices down. We've seen that impact when we were doing Facebook ads and Google ads, where inventories opened up, which is driving prices down to an extent. But it also depends on your industry. If you're in a competitive industry, that's pretty much remained the same. Looking at some of the other industries, I mean, oil and gas, hammered across the board, not just with COVID and the lack of demand, but also the fight that's happening with Saudi Arabia and Russia, which is really pushing the oil prices down for the first time in negative territory, which is incredible. It was unheard of literally even 6-8 months back before this took place. So that's some of the mid-impact industries that we're looking at. And then when you're looking at your industries that have unfortunately or fortunately been impacted on the high side, either positive or negative, you're looking at industries like gaming. Gaming's also an interesting one, because on the one side, gaming's been impacted because of the lack of like conventions. So conventions were big. That's how they promote and launch games. Conventions like Comic-Con have obviously a big impact overall. So that's been a challenge on one side, but on the other side, people have this huge amount of time that's opened up. They're not spending time commuting. They're not spending time traveling. So all of a sudden you're like literally at home. You're more efficient, so to speak. Subjective, but overall the perception is that you're more efficient when you're at home, and you have this time that's opened up, which is essentially being filled by your hobbies. And if your hobby is gaming, then all of a sudden the gaming industry's seen a massive uptick in media consumption and time spent online. And organizations are capitalizing on this. One of our clients that we work with very closely essentially quadrupled, not even double, not even triple, they quadrupled their budgets last month in April, and got a pretty amazing return because they are in the gaming industry, and they just saw a huge uptick in consumption that was taking place. And that's also causing some of the organizations like Ubisoft and some of the other gaming companies to essentially ramp up releases of new games that are coming out. Some of the high impact industries on the negative side, of course, we all know about hospitality, leisure, tourism, devastated, a huge impact. Airlines, I read a story about Virgin that's going to essentially file for bankruptcy towards the end of the month if they don't get a bailout from the British government, which is, again, crazy. And retail. Retail's another good one because they are seeing an uplift in terms of consumption and revenue, but they also understand the fact that people are buying more than they normally would, and the demand's going to taper off when the situation comes back to normal. People are stocking up. So once the situation's back to normal, their potential grocery demand's going to essentially go lower, and they're going to dip into their stocks and supply. So they're aware of it, that they are riding the high right now because of obviously the increase in demand for goods, food and services. So they're definitely riding that wave right now. The other industry to look at, we're going to talk about this in some of the other upcoming slides, is the anything to do with online. So for example, just reading an article yesterday, Shopify has taken over from RBC, which is a bank that's been around for like at least 80, 100 years, if not more, as the most valuable company in Canada, which is a pretty incredible feat for a small company that started off about 10 or 12 years back. And today, it's just exploded. The stock's gone from 150, 200 bucks a share to almost over $1,000 a share in the past month and a half. So it's definitely been a pretty high impact, positive impact, especially on online businesses of that nature. So next, we're going to look at some opportunities that this aspect is really presenting for us. So when we're looking at opportunities, we're essentially looking at opportunities that focus around areas or focus around aspects that we are involved with. And these aspects include things like videos. There's a lot of video consumption that's happening right now. Short videos, long videos, a lot of consumption taking place. Aspects associated with sleep, mobile online games, and sleep means, you know, stuff like meditation. Chat tools. Some of you might know TikTok's exploded, and Drake took advantage of that, and he launched a video which essentially straight up shot to #1 because, again, it was a very clever marketing ploy that he did. He did a video which was literally made for TikTok because he had to do certain moves, certain dance moves, and no surprises, exploded to the #1 spot in all the charts and got like 1 billion views in like just a week or so. So there's definitely media outlets that are taking advantage of that, celebrities that are taking advantage of that. Online education is another area that is hugely in demand right now, especially with the fact that both governments at the municipal level, at the state level, have essentially stopped school, right? They've closed schools, they've closed universities. We're not really sure as to how long those schools and universities are going to be closed for, which has led to this massive influx of opportunity as far as the online education vertical is concerned. And it's not just primarily for schools and universities, but we're also seeing a huge massive influx when it comes to education, even for executives. So a lot of your universities that were offering courses, whether it was after hours or night courses, are now pivoting their strategy, and they're trying to do courses that are more online oriented. Again, a very interesting opportunity, very interesting vertical. Cooking and baking has exploded. I don't know about you guys, but if you ever tried to buy flour recently in the grocery store or the supermarket, you won't find it. And that's just talking about the amazing amount of opportunity when it comes to even the cooking recipe vertical. It's and baking vertical. People want to eat at home, of course. The restaurants are closed, and that's again an opportunity. Gyms have had to pivot to online training sessions or an online training based approach. So you can see a lot of the popular famous gym instructors now giving out videos that are essentially online. So that's another area. Live video, live streaming, and opportunities for pets. These are all opportunities that are essentially on the rise and ripe to be taken advantage of. Here's some examples of organizations on a sort of a larger scale as to what they're doing. So we see organizations like Unilever and Baidu and Ogilvy and Nike, and these are just some names. There's of course a ton of other examples that we can provide here. Organizations have really stepped up. So for example, you're looking at Unilever that's committing about 100 million for COVID action. Baidu's done something really cool with their maps feature on their cell phones, where they're identifying the epidemic zones. So it's almost like sort of like a reminder for people, you know, if you're stepping out of your house, hey, be careful. You're either in the hot zone or there's a huge amount of influx of COVID patients in your area. It's just as a safety measure. And then you have Nike that's changed their entire advertising strategy. They're primarily focusing more around social distancing and creating awareness around this particular topic and using some of their endorsements. We can see a tweet here from Tiger Woods around that whole aspect. And then you're also looking at organizations like Zoom. Zoom, of course, exploded. We're on Zoom right now. It just goes on to talk about the popularity of this network, which has totally exploded in the past month and a half or 2 months. And they're doing stuff like free video conferencing for K-12 schools. Vans, the shoe company, is donating a custom designed footwear for their small businesses. Alibaba has announced a bunch of measures, as well as banks across the board that are also mandated by governments to help small, mid-sized businesses that are really impacted by this. So the whole idea, the whole premise with these examples that we're putting out there is you can sort of like notice a bit of a trend, a pattern. You can see organizations pivoting their advertising strategy. They're still spending the money, but the message that they're putting out is not the bottom of the funnel message where it's like, hey, buy, or convert, or here's a discount, come in, you know, essentially let's try and push sales at you. Organizations are smart enough, at least a lot of them, to pivot their brand messaging that they're putting out to be more of, hey, we're in this with you. We're here to support you. So a lot of the ad spend that's taking place is more going towards top level, education-oriented, concern-oriented, corporate social responsibility, CSR initiatives. So organizations understand the fact that people are going to remember. People are going to remember what these companies did, and then that's going to potentially translate into loyalty down the lane. And That is the key message that we want to drive home with some of these opportunities that are presented, is the fact that right now you want to be thinking about, yes, short-term approaches, but you also want to be considering your long-term approach, because the pandemic's not going to last. There's going to be a world outside of the pandemic. People are not going to stay at home forever. Organizations are going to switch, people are going to switch habits. And at that stage, people are going to remember what you did as an organization to help them. So we get a lot of inquiries coming in from small businesses or mid-sized businesses saying, hey, what can we do? What do we want to do at this stage? What's the advertising messaging and philosophy that we want to really push out there? And the premise is really focus on social responsibility initiatives right now at this stage. Help people, because when you help people, they're in turn going to help you. That's really the overall philosophy that brands are like trying to really push out there. So interesting examples there. And then there's some very cool first-timer opportunities that are emerging with this sort of a situation that we're facing. Again, with every situation, with every disaster, there's opportunities. One of my favorite books is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and he very categorically mentions that in one of the chapters there, saying in the Great Depression in the 30s, you had the highest number of millionaires that were ever made. So it's about people recognizing opportunity in the times of need, and opportunity done in the ethical manner, not like price gouging or any of that sort, but doing it ethically with what the demand is. So one of the areas that's exploding again right now is the online medical consultancy side. Huge explosion. We're working with a client right now that just launched their online prescription delivery service. So essentially, with a click of a button, your prescription's going to be delivered to your house for free. So incredible service that's just being launched. Online education we talked about, live streaming, buying home, fitness equipment, online banking, all of these things are on the rise, which is an opportunity for organizations and consultants and strategists alike to try and see as to how you can leverage your skill set and bring some of your expertise to the table for some of these areas for everybody's benefit. So we want to focus in on some simple recipes for success. And here's where McKinsey's put out something really awesome. There's essentially 5 areas that organizations have to look towards and act towards. So the first area that you really want to look at, and that's the immediate side, is resolve. So you want to resolve any existing situation or challenge that you have in your company or in your organization. That's the first thing you want to do. Whether it's cash flow issues, whether it's your employees, whether it's your workforce, your customers, your technology, your business partners, that's the first area that you want to focus on. You want to resolve that side. Once that's done, you want to move to the next stage, and that's really the stage of resilience. You want to look towards planning for the next couple of months, because we know the situation's not going to be normal. It's not going to be back to normal for at least the next couple of months, perhaps even more. So you want to focus in on resilience-based efforts, cash management challenges, and also start thinking about what's going to happen to your demand and to your product offering, and how the consumption needs, the patterns are going to change. That's all a part of resilience. Then you want to focus in on the return, which kind of is in sync with the poll that Peter put out in the beginning of the session. You want to really focus in on creating a detailed plan to return back to normal as soon as possible. And you want to have a plan in place for that. And we have something very specific to digital that we're going to talk about, which is a 7-step blueprint that we'll be showcasing in a bit for your benefit. Reimagination is really important because the world, of course, has changed. And one of the statistics that blew me away was the fact that one of the banks put out a press release a couple of days back saying that work from home is working really good for the employees. Productivity is not suffered. Everything's business as usual for the most part. And when things come back to normal, even when the emergency measures are lifted, 50 to 70% of our workforce is going to continue working from home. Now let that sink in for a bit. Here's a bank that's got about 30 or 40,000 employees, or perhaps even more, all across the country, that has just made a statement that 60 to 70% of their employees are going to continue working from home. Now think about the impact that it's going to have across your entire customer journey, your entire buyer's journey has all of a sudden dramatically just changed. No commute time, no travel time. 9 to 5 is not sort of like a fixed hour. People are going to be consuming media even during those hours. And to that point, I challenge you, or I bet you, take a look at your analytics. Compare your best time of day for conversions and your best day of week for conversions a couple of months back and look at it today. And I bet you it shifted. At least it shifted for the majority of the businesses. The patterns are changing. So you really have to essentially reimagine your approach for customer acquisition and other marketing areas of focus. And then the last area that you really want to be focusing as an organization is really looking at reform. You want to stay within the regulatory compliance requirements that the governments are going to put out, both at the local and the federal level. This is going to be a big impact across the board. They're going to mandate things like at any stage, you can only have half your workforce in the office. Or for let's say, if you're looking at SMBs, if you're looking at restaurants, there's going to be some social distancing put in place in restaurants so as to try and avoid a second wave, even though a lot of the experts predict that it's coming. But the idea is to try and mitigate the risk or minimize the risk of that second wave as much as possible. And here's the slide that I was referring to, especially when it comes to your cash acquisition. So when you're looking at your cash flow right now, you want to be essentially looking at 5 core areas for your cash flow. And this is where you want to strategize, solidify, and maximize each of these areas. One is win back. It's always more profitable to focus on existing or lost customers as opposed to chasing new business. We all know that as marketers. And here's a time to revisit that strategy because that hasn't changed. You want to focus in on win back. You want to regain customers that are your existing customers, keep their confidence going so that your attrition is low, people are not canceling. You are empathizing with them in their situation because, of course, the financial and the economic situation has changed. So you're empathizing with them and creating custom strategies to help them during this time, right? Some of the things that we're doing in WSI as an organization is we're essentially focusing on sort of like maintenance mode as opposed to acquisition mode. So if there were websites that needed to be revamped, this is the best time to do it, right? Let's revamp your website. It's not been done for a year or so. Let's take care of your website. Let's redo your website. Let's look at incorporating e-commerce in your website. So if it's, let's say, an education business that's been brick and mortar for the longest time, let's try and put an e-commerce strategy in place for you at this level. And let's do it in a manner that it doesn't burn a hole in your pocket. Let's do it in an economical manner. And if there's a phased out payment plan that we need to put in place, that's essentially what we do. Renewals are very tricky right now at this stage. So if you have customers that are doing renewing contracts, that's again a very sensitive discussion that you want to have. You want to be careful with how the renewals being positioned. Renewals typically get positioned with upsells because you show them results for the past year and you see how well they've done and you want to upsell them to the next level. Not the best time perhaps to pitch the upsell of the renewal. You want to keep them happy. You want to keep them stable, focusing on the renewals. The next area is upsells. And one of the examples that I just mentioned for the upsells is if you have a business that can essentially pivot or add an online or an e-commerce strategy, then here's an opportunity to gain some additional revenue from an existing client. Cross-selling is my favorite one. And the reason why it's my favorite one is because people that were saying no to partnerships literally 30 days back are saying yes to partnerships in a second. So this is my favorite because when let's say you wanted to launch a webinar or you wanted to, let's say, tie up with another individual that has a big following and do something co-branded. Let's say a month or a couple of months back, that wasn't happening. Today is the time to make it happen because everybody wants more business. Everybody wants to collaborate. Everybody wants to tie up and do things together. So this is an opportunity today for you to really think outside the box. Think about the partnerships that you were chasing. Think about the partnerships that you were trying to leverage the past 6 months or a past year that were not materializing because the people there that you were trying to leverage were so busy. Today is a different time in a day. Today is the best time to actually leverage the opportunities, reach out to these people again, and you just might be surprised with the answers that you get. And then, of course, focusing on new customers. But again, the strategy to acquire new customers has to change because customers or potential audiences' buying behavior and patterns have changed. So you want to be changing your behavior based on these patterns that are changing. Great. I guess we're getting a lot of questions, Peter. See the chat box popping up. Sorry, you're muted, Peter.
Just comments. One of the I'm trying to get what was the company in Canada whose stock went up to over $1,000 per share that you mentioned?
Yeah, that's Shopify. Right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, just wanted to see what sort of traction's taking place, but we'll definitely queue up these questions towards the end.
Yeah, I think the we want to talk about the mass one. We want to save that to the end.
Great, excellent. So the other area that we want to focus in on, and this is something that we utilize at WSI quite aggressively, is our blueprint framework for organizations when we are putting digital strategies in place. It's essentially a 7-step process that is the best of breed methodology, whether it's HubSpot's inbound framework or the Serious Decisions framework that's adopted in the SMART Goals approach. These 7 steps are the core pillars for your digital marketing strategy. You can see tactics is step 6. So a lot of the times we hear consultants or organizations pushing people straight into tactics. Hey, let's do some SEO, let's do some paid search, let's do some Facebook, let's do some LinkedIn. But you really want to be doing your homework for the first 5 steps prior to getting into tactics. And the reason why this blueprint framework and revisiting this blueprint framework is even more important today than any other time is because think about your personas for a sec. Think about your target audience. Let's say that they were consuming content through an offline medium before, let's say a trade show. That was kind of like where your target audience was really consuming their information, and you were utilizing that information. You were very aggressive there. Today, that same persona, that same target audience is consuming information in a very different manner. They're probably active on social media. They're probably active on websites. They're probably active on online sources. So again, you want to be shifting your strategy when it comes to tactics based on the shift in your target audience, in your persona. So that's the reason why looking at your framework and essentially tweaking your framework to how the behavior and the patterns have shifted is really going to be impacting your tactics and your results and KPIs that you're getting in step 7. So a very important step here, and most likely you'll probably be doing another deep dive session in the blueprint framework itself where we'll go through these 7 steps in detail, which should be a pretty exciting session. But right now, the key takeaway is you want to revisit your framework, especially the persona and the content mapping side, because your audience is not consuming content today the way it was a couple of months back. And you want to make sure that that's all in sync with the current patterns and the current behavior. From a customer communication standpoint, there's definitely a shift for physical event-based programs to go online. Webinars is a huge opportunity right now. Consultants can leverage this, organizations can leverage this by really putting out very high quality, high impact webinars, and then essentially adopting this approach in their go-to-market strategy and still hitting their lead numbers. Because of this, there's also a caveat. There's so much content that's being pushed out there online that there's a lot of noise. And in order for you to really stand out off the noise, I mean, this was even true a couple of months back because there was a ton of content always, but more so now because there's just an influx of content that's coming at the audience. So if you really want to stand out, you want to be delivering something pretty awesome. So take your time to establish quality content that's going to really stand out, as opposed to pushing something run of the mill out there that's not really going to capture the audience for you. You want to pay attention on this in this subject and topic because there is a huge influx of content that's coming in. The other area that's very interesting is securing your media. So if you're an organization that does a lot of programmatic advertising, that does a lot of display ads all across the US, then you want to be securing your media early, because not only have we dealt with COVID, where the governments have taken over inventory to broadcast social distancing messages, but you also have the presidential election that's going to come up. So you have the presidential election that's going to come up in October, and then you also have the government buying out a lot of inventory from your popular websites where your target audience is consuming content for their health-oriented messages, and your strategy is going to suffer because you're not going to be able to secure this media. Or even if you do at a later stage, it's going to come at a really high price because of these two reasons. Inventory is going fast. Even though there is excess inventory, but you have these two events that are essentially taking a lot of this inventory away. So you want to secure your media early, and which is where the whole planning aspect comes into play and becomes very important.
Vineesh, you want to launch that the poll?
Yeah, let's do that.
Move on to the next section. Just give the audience a moment to answer the poll. I'll let you know how we're doing.
Great.
There, I just launched it, so everybody should be seeing the next poll.
Perfect. So the next question really is, what resources do you intend to use for your digital marketing strategy? Are you going to use an in-house team? Are you using an external expert and a consultant? Or are you going to use a hybrid approach?
While we're waiting, Vineesh, do you mind if I jump in with a question?
Please go ahead, Meg.
Sure, yeah. So one of the things that I'm hearing a lot from marketers in Boston and probably all over is that budgets are cut. And so maybe tactics are shifting. And I personally think that this is a great opportunity to get back to the basics, which is sort of some of what you were showing on those slides, like really understanding your customers, thinking about how to reach them more effectively on digital channels, maybe focusing on in-house marketing practices that will optimize your website and content. What are some other examples that come to mind for you is my question?
That's a great question, Meg. I think one of the straight up aspects that organizations can leverage is also just renegotiating contracts. I mean, you have contracts in place for like different tools and different services that you're paying for. I think that's an area that you can leverage because everybody's being quite generous at this stage. And one of our slides is going to show the fact that there's like over 190 different examples of sites and organizations that are providing stuff complimentary. So I think from a cash flow standpoint, doing that is going to be beneficial. And then I think on the other side, you also have to your point, focus a bit more on the self-education aspects. Still get the consulting or the expertise, but perhaps, let's say, not at the level that you would in the past. It really all depends on your cash flow because there is also an ROI factor at play. So you want to get more creative, you want to get more clever as far as your marketing approach is concerned. Do keep an eye on the bigger picture of things because remember, this is not something that's happening because of the economy. It's man-made. Things are going to come back to normal. We don't know how long that's going to take, but do keep that in mind as well. So you want to keep the longer picture in mind, yet at the same time make some moves in the short run that really impact your overall approach, right? But keep the bigger picture in mind. Things will come back to normal at a certain stage, and you don't want to be doing anything that jeopardizes your long-term strategy overall, right?
Totally agree. Thank you.
Vineesh, I'll share the results of that poll now.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so this is really cool. So in-house team, 39%, using an external expert and a consultant, 13%, and a hybrid approach, a whopping 48%. Cool. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. Thanks, guys. All right, so diving really quickly into marketing tactics and tools. So some of the areas that organizations are looking at focusing their efforts on, and I think, Meg, this also goes to your point on how organizations or marketing organizations or departments are evolving, is doing things like conversational marketing, chatbots, right? So you have tools like Mobile Monkey that are out there that are not that expensive, that facilitate lead generation at a very efficient cost per lead. So doing conversational marketing like chatbots, getting into areas, newer areas like podcasting, that doesn't require, a lot from an investment standpoint. You can have subject matter experts that essentially get together in your organization and start out podcasting, live streaming sessions, doing Q&As, addressing the audience needs and challenges. And one example that comes to mind is right now, we all know that restaurants are hurting. And one of the organizations very quickly built a strategy around providing resources or guidance for restaurants, and they've gained in popularity. So these are the kind of ideas that you want to be thinking about. Video marketing is an exciting avenue. It's growing. Video consumption is growing. More personalization. I mean, this has been the buzzword for marketing for the past couple of years. You want to personalize your messaging, which also relates to ABM, account-based marketing initiatives. You want to be focusing on that. And other typical areas like programmatic. Mobile first is an interesting one because we've seen a massive shift. So everybody was all about mobile first in the past, before this thing happened. And now what we're seeing is that desktops coming back again. So, desktops screaming back for attention saying, hey, don't count me out yet. I'm still important. So you got to pay attention to me. So people are obviously at home. They're spending more times on their desktops as opposed to their mobile devices because they're less on the move. And that's really shifted the percentage of mobile versus desktop users. That speed at which that transition is taking place is scaled back to an extent. So in your overall approach, when you're doing web design, when you're doing user experience, UI, UX, you want to be focusing on the desktop experience as well. So mobile first right now, a bit of a question mark. But in the long run, of course, it is a mobile world, especially with the advent of 5G, which is a phenomenal thing that's going to impact us fairly soon. So at this stage, I wanted to have Bob and Meg comment a little bit about some of the resources for COVID-19 that the AMA is putting out. And there's a ton of resources there. So I'll let Meg and Bob comment on this section. Let me pull up the page here. Go ahead, guys.
Good. Excellent so far, Vineesh. Ridiculously awesome content, and we appreciate all that you're sharing with us. Meg and I just wanted to point out that the AMA national website, that's the American Marketing Association's website, ama.org, I believe is the URL. Let me, ama.org. They have some fantastic resources for folks with regard to how to pivot during the pandemic. A lot of blog posts they're putting out there, and like we are here at AMA Boston, they are having webinars, and again, a lot of additional, very relevant, very timely content. And as you can see right at the top of the page, the COVID-19 response, help and resources for their members. And this is our website, the AMA Boston website, and I'll let Meg talk about the podcast that we do, which is fantastic. We've been doing that for quite a while. Meg's been very instrumental, and Chris, our colleague at Bates Communications, in putting that together in our blog. And we just want to encourage people to check out our website, to check out the AMA national website. And let me hand it over to Meg to talk about anything perhaps I overlooked.
Yeah, well, you saw on that last actually screen that we were just on, that AMA has a podcast where we focused on interviewing local and national thought leaders in the marketing space. This most recent episode that Vineesh had up on the screen is with Scott Braun, who's the CMO of Drizzly, a local e-commerce alcohol delivery company. They're actually the largest in the world, and they're located right in Boston. That's an example of a company that's done pretty well during COVID-19 because it's a marketplace and delivery focused service. So we're connecting with local thought leaders all the time. We'd encourage you to subscribe to our podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, all of the major platforms. And also just definitely consider coming to our events. We have a lot of COVID-19 based marketing pivoting themes going on right now. And I think that our content will continue to evolve as marketing continues to evolve alongside the changing world. And it also, I wanted to mention, actually great timing. It's like we planned this. There is a great opportunity to become a member now. Historically, it costs $300 for a membership annually, and our new everyday price just got dropped to $150 a year, which makes it much more affordable. And there are a lot of benefits to becoming a member. One of them is we'll share your thought leadership. You can blog with us regularly. You get access to exclusive events. exclusive resources on the national website and on our local website. So if you want more information about that, feel free to connect with Bob and I on LinkedIn or through email.
Yeah, and to jump on that, piggyback on that just real quickly, and then back to you, Vineesh. We always at AMA Boston have opportunities for volunteers, for board members. I mean, we'd love you to join at that $149 price, but take that one step further and join us on the board or join us as volunteers. And the sky's the limit in terms of opportunities. You could help write some blog posts, so that gives you visibility in terms of thought leadership. You can put on webinars, perhaps like we're doing today. I think of how I met Meg a couple of years ago. I can't remember exactly when, but at our marketing mingle. And then she got on the board, and she's going to be president as of July 1. So there is quite a fast track too, if you want to get extremely involved and take on big responsibility, but in return get some great leadership experience and visibility for not just you, but your company as well. So thanks, Vineesh, for giving Meg and I a chance to talk about AMA and AMA Boston, and let's maybe continue with the webinar that you've been presenting, which is again, fascinating. Really, really good stuff. Thanks, Vineesh and Peter.
Terrific. Thanks, Meg. Thanks, Bob. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. So that's the resources of material that the AMA is putting out. And then we wanted to showcase this particular tool. Again, we're all about helping marketers at this stage. Entrepreneur put out an amazing article that talks about 198 free tools that can really help you in organizations. And this is what I was also alluding to early on. I'm just going to pull up the website and quickly going to focus on some of the marketing tools that they're highlighting. So everything's classified really nicely over here. So you can look at a whole bunch of different tools that are available. And when it comes to marketing, you can see organizations like Salesforce and MailChimp and Moz and a bunch of other organizations that are really stepping up the plate and offering either free versions of their tool sets, or they're offering really discounted pricing for a lot of their tools that they have that organizations are using. So across the board for small, mid, large organizations, I think this is hugely beneficial because everybody's very sensitive, cash flow sensitive right now. So this resource is pretty awesome with all of the information very neatly classified in the different buckets. So we have the link in the presentation deck, but definitely I hope you can take advantage of this. So at this stage, we also have something that's really cool, which is a post-COVID impact digital marketing assessment that we want to do for you guys for participating in this webinar. So I'll let Peter talk about this a bit. All yours, Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Vineesh, for this incredible information. So what we want to do for the webinar participants is, if you go to this, the link, which will be on the next slide, we're offering basically a consultative meeting with us to understand what your current marketing strategies are. We'll ask you a bunch of questions, we'll gather some information, then we'll go off and do an analysis report, which we can deliver to you, and with our recommendations on how to move forward. And that's being offered today. This is complimentary. There's no charge for this. We're not selling anything. We're just trying to extend our help during this time. And that's the QR code and the short code link that you can grab that now, and also will be sent out with a follow-up email.
Awesome. Thanks, Peter. I think it's up to our Q&A now.
Yeah, so I had one question that that came in even before, and it's a very interesting question. I know we've had some discussion. Was the Facebook and Instagram, and we know Google and even LinkedIn sometimes bans products. In this case, I believe that it's a face mask, that a fabric mask that a company is putting together. It's 100% legal, and I think this got caught up in the price gouging when everybody was making all these decisions. And now they're banning Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and LinkedIn seems to also be banning an ad to this effect. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. So my thoughts are twofold when it comes to anything related to PPE, that's personal protective equipment. There is a dire need and a shortage, as we all know, for PPE. So organizations at the local level, and I'm talking not just government organizations, but even community-oriented associations, nonprofits, are all seeking PPE. So there's a lot of there's a lot out there in terms of you being able to provide your PPE to these organizations without having to advertise it, right? So you're going to get a fair price. You can connect with the nonprofits, you can connect with the local organizations. So I think, and this is just my personal opinion, but I feel that the philosophy for Google and Facebook and these other organizations that do paid advertising and forbid paid advertising in certain areas is, hey, there's a ton of opportunity for you to push your product. You can do it at the federal level, you can do it at the local level. You don't need to advertise your product in order to sell it because there's enough demand, there's enough shortage, and you can just fill out a form and someone's going to call you to ask you as to, you know, the details of the product. So that's one side. Now, if you're going into personal protective equipment like homemade masks, like masks made out of cloth, and you see a lot of people doing that, then I think, to Meg's point, you want to get a little clever as far as your strategy is concerned. So like, for example, my wife got some masks, but the way that she got it was through a Facebook group. So people that are making this at a very small scale level are getting active more on the social scheme of things, the group level. So they're really promoting themselves in these groups and pushing this product out there. So it's more sort of like a guerrilla approach, a very sort of like a ground level approach that they're taking to really push something that they're doing on their own or pushing their own products, right? So yeah, it's kind of like two sides to the story. But when it comes to typical PPE like face masks or gowns or any of that sort, I mean, there is no shortage of demand. You should not be having to use paid ads in order to promote the product because everybody seems to need it right now. You know, just talk to your local chain, your supermarket or your grocery chain, and I'm sure they'd be happy to strike up a deal with you.
So we did have a couple other questions. One came in from Paul was, what was the company or industry you said X% of employees are continuing to work remotely? I thought you said it was a bank.
Yep, it's Bank of Montreal that actually came up with that announcement a couple of days back.
Okay. And the other one, the marketing tactics / tools, where did that chart come from?
So yeah, we can provide specifics one-on-one, Peter. So yeah, we can definitely respond back in that one-on-one.
Okay. And so the one thing that the masks weren't necessarily PPE masks. I mean, I think they were. Okay. So what's happening in right here in Mass, it's now becoming a law now that everybody has to wear a mask. Sure. So companies are being creative and getting reusable masks. And I think some of these manufacturing companies are looking how to advertise.
Right. So yeah, I think that guerrilla approach is going to work pretty good for them at this stage. Because like you said, most of the big guys, the big players are really banning that sort of advertising right now.
And just some other good comments I think I'd like to share. Bob came in that Dove has done some great ads that are relevant to the pandemic. He said he believes Dove is that owned by Unilever? Or another comment, many retail brands are shifting to making face masks, but every brand has an opportunity to help. And I think we're seeing that, like, actually where it's going to become law, that's going to be a branding opportunity for companies. If you have any examples of that.
Locally, I can see that a lot of the sporting organizations are taking advantage of that. So like the NBA is getting into it, and they have like custom face masks that are being built for like teams, and that's also for generating revenue for themselves. Because of course there's no games that are happening right now. The stadiums are closed. So I think that's one example that comes to mind where an organization's leveraging masks and really personalizing them and using that for a good cause, because I think they're donating a lot of the proceeds of that as well.
So I just want to be aware of the time. We are at the top of the hour. I don't see any additional questions. We'll try to get back to that one chart. If any other questions, we could probably answer one more if any other people have. Looks like we're all set. Why don't we just flash up the contact slide?
Yeah.
Peter and Vineesh, we at AMA Boston are very appreciative of the time you gave to our audience, and I thought it was very insightful, some great information, and anyone who attended, I believe, will have access to the slides, if not be sent a link to them as a follow-up. So know that the slides, everybody, will be available. I personally thank you, Vineesh and Peter from WSI, and I know Meg will concur. Thanks so much. Meg, do you want to have any closing remarks?
I think that's great. Thanks for coming, everyone. We hope to see you again soon, and definitely at the next webinar.
Oh, Bob, do you want to mention the marketing?
Yes, next Thursday, a week from tonight. I think Meg already mentioned it, but go to our website, amaboston.org, go to the events calendar. If it's not up there yet, because I think I didn't see it there yet, it will be soon, but just know next Thursday, that's May 14th, I think it's at 7:00 p.m., a free marketing mingle. It's a lot of fun, guys, and we have some great conversation, and you make some excellent contacts, and to me, this is how you get it done during this pandemic, as Vineesh reinforced throughout his slides. You got to get together online, get to know people using Zoom, pivot, reinvent yourselves, and make the most of these difficult days. Again, thanks, Vineesh. Thanks, Peter. On behalf of Meg, myself, and the board of directors of AMA Boston, we thank everybody for attending today, and we will see you all soon.
Thank you, Bob and Meg. We really appreciate the being able to co-sponsor this event with you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Excellent, Peter. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.